Hello, and welcome to Atypical, the podcast where we look at life from a more atypical perspective. My name's Simon, he, they, and I'm joined this week by...
Me, Joey.
Hey! The Right Honourable Bishop of Cheam is back to join us.
Bishop of Cheam?
I mean, it was better than Dowager Duchess, so...
I'm not sure about that, but okay.
Fair enough. We'll have to get Kuro back. Anyway, so we thought we'd put together this little episode because it is Dyslexia Awareness Week. Certainly in the UK, I don't know about the rest of the world because I'm on holiday right now, and this is being recorded in the past, but you're listening to it in the future, and now clocks are broken in my head. So should we talk about dyslexia, Joey?
Well, that's why we're here.
Indeed we are. Yes, so dyslexia, it's a bit of a literacy challenge, and you can think of these as a rainbow. You know, they're colourful, they're varied, they're very hard to define. I mean, have you ever tried pinning down the exact shade of blue in the sky? It's kind of like trying to define dyslexia. It's shifting. But the main thing about it is that most people will agree that dyslexia tends to jumble up things like the smaller breakdowns of words. It makes language comprehension a bit more tricky. As with autism and ADHD, stuff we've talked about on this podcast many, many times, there's a good chance that dyslexia is part of your family genes, and it's therefore pretty damn likely that a parent or a grandparent also has it. And it comes along with a lot of other comorbidities, language and organisation and working memory. And dyslexia has been in the news again. I mean, apart from the fact that it's Awareness Week this week, I did a quick sort of look on Google. Other search engines are available for the news, and there's quite a lot from the last few months. There's people looking at how we can import some of the learning that we got for dyslexic support during COVID back into normal daily school life. A relatively well-known UK politician, Penny Mordaunt, came out as dyslexic not long ago. And I found a couple of articles around improved support in some of the American schools. And there's not really a huge amount of surprise here. There's around 10% of people have some degree of dyslexia. That's relatively well established. And so even if you're not dyslexic yourself, you probably know someone who is, you know, and even if you don't, there's lots of celebrities who do. I mean, I did a quick, again, Google, there's Richard Branson, there's Jamie Oliver, Keira Knightley and Jim Carrey, Noel Gallagher, Cher. We all know Cher, she's been around for the entirety of human history. Lewis Hamilton, the race driver, you know, and that list just goes on and on and on. So dyslexia is probably the most common learning difficulty worldwide. Certainly, Joey, you and I know lots of people have got dyslexia,
including ourselves.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I don't really know myself, so you know
that's
why.
true.
Yeah. But it's kind of had a bit of a spotty history, and I might go into that at a later time. But defining it has always been a little bit difficult. And well, do you want to tell us a bit more about how it's defined, Joey?
Yes. So as you said, it is a bit of a spectrum-y, all over the place definition. So dyslexia makes reading and spelling difficult, especially if you're trying to do it quickly. I think most people with dyslexia find that while under pressure, it is significantly more noticeable that you struggle.
Oh, yeah.
So understanding the sounds in words, verbal memory, and how quickly you can process all of that tends to be affected by dyslexia. It's not generally linked to intelligence, although there are many instances of incredibly intelligent and very sort of Renaissance sort of jack of all trade people from history.
Oh, incredibly creative and brilliant people.
Yes, widely believed, like Leonardo da Vinci was dyslexic, Michelangelo. Lots of people who you think are great brains and thinkers have been thought to be dyslexic from history. So it is something that affects all people who across the spectrum. So it's very likely you, as Simon says, that you know someone who suffers with dyslexia. Although suffer does again depend on the degree, because for some people it can be debilitating and it affect them at school horrendously, and for other people they might not realise they're dyslexic until they're in their 30s and 40s, and it's something that comes up through work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it can affect coordination. It can affect your ability to process sums and in maths, concentration, organisation. Issues like that are quite common. Not to say that if you're very bad at organising, you're dyslexic. It's not that kind of thing. It's just one of the things that a lot of people tend to notice that they struggle with. So you can break it down into sort of 5 areas that sort of might be useful if you were starting to think maybe you're dyslexic, maybe think if any of these things stand out to you. Jumbling up certain things that are similar. So B's and D's, getting them the wrong way around. That's something I used to struggle with
I still
all the time. I have a trick that I think about the word bed.
Right.
Because
bed.
I
see. Because it's
bed looks like a bed when you write it all joined up. So that's how I remember, with the B being the headboard and the D being the footboard, is how I remember. And that has always worked for me, but I used to struggle with it all the time up until I was probably 10. And that was a little trick I learned. Getting words completely the wrong way around. So was and saw completely back, getting left and right mixed up.
Yeah, I do that one. I actually have to think with my left and right. I'd go, I write with my right hand. It's that way.
Okay. It's funny because everyone comes up with their own sort of little tricks to try and cope, their own little coping mechanisms. It's always interesting to find out where other people's are, because you think yours are normal and then other people go, oh, actually, I do it this way. And you're like, oh, I could see how that would work.
Was it you or Sam who said to me when I was teaching one of you to map read, and you went, you're very good at map reading, but you can't tell your left from your right. I was like, different processing. That would have been Sam. Probably Sam. He's meaner to me, so you know.
I can tell my left from my right because when I was 8, I was playing in the garage with my brother, and I was on a mattress, and the mattress fell and slammed my thumb between the mattress and the wall, so my thumb exploded.
Oh, nasty. So your thumb exploded.
It exploded. My thumb, the nail came straight off. I had 2 great big holes down the side. I had a little island of skin, and then 2 great big holes down the side of my thumb, and they went so deep you couldn't see the bottom of them. It was just dark. Lots of blood. It was fine. It got butterfly stitched back together, and it was fine. But because of that, I very much had a visual reminder that is my left hand. And from that point on, because of having such a visual reminder of which is left and right, it's never been a problem before. But I did used to, before that point, struggle with it. But again, having a very nice visual cue, i.e. one of my thumbs is mildly deformed, helps. So yeah, trauma helps coping with left and right. Who knew?
I mean, we've talked about trauma on this podcast before. Science, it can be helpful. It can also be traumatic.
It can also be not worth the help. Yes.
Yeah, well, indeed.
So short-term memory issues is another one. Retaining information without having to continually have that reinforcement. So people with dyslexia tend to find that they are people who have to write stuff down, repeat it, otherwise it disappears.
Don't give away all my secrets for how I run this podcast.
Which is common also with people with ADHD.
Yes.
So the 2 working together, great for short-term memory. Coordination, so often referred to as dyspraxia, which can be its own thing entirely by itself, but just not quite really knowing where your limbs are. But also actually verbally as well, you can entirely trip over your own tongue. But again, you also just reach for the coffee cup and completely miss and knock it over your keyboard, which I have done twice in the last month. How the keyboard is still working, do not know.
Dyspraxia.
And then essentially, it's the idea of reading and writing, and it generally is relatively obvious to you if you struggle with reading and writing, because words are everywhere. Our entire society requires you to read, and sometimes very, very quickly, especially when driving, reading motorway signs. The number of times I will misread a sign, and it can even just be an advert, and the word will have jumped, and I'll be like, they can't say that on a sign. Oh, it doesn't say that.
Yeah,
that happens quite a lot to me. A number of words because the way as well which your brain works with processing words is that instead of trying to read the word, it tries to guess at the shape of the word and jump processing, because that requires less effort. So it tries to look for the shape and guess, and generally with dyslexia, the guess is wrong. So you'll misread something, you'll look back at it, and you'll still misread it, and then you might actually require someone to point out that actually that doesn't say sheet, that says shirt, and you're like, oh yeah, weird. And that happens quite a lot still to me to this day. I don't have to do as much reading these days because I just shout at people until they're slightly thinner, which is much better for not having to do quite so much reading. But I obviously had quite a few qualifications and things.
I was going to say, you had to like sit down and do tests and stuff, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Still had, yes, I had to do qualifications and stuff for that. So it did present itself. But in my day-to-day life, I'm not a big reader. I'm a listener or a watcher in terms of my learning. So, which is possibly because I find it much easier than reading. Although I do give me a good book and I can just lose an afternoon or two.
I mean, yeah, I'm more of a kinesthetic learner. I think in many ways, I learn better by doing. Although, having said that, I do read a lot. One of you did once say that it's sort of my equivalent of meditating is to sit with a book.
Yes, because you disappear.
Yeah.
You're there, but you're not.
You're all thinking, oh, thank God, he's quiet for once.
I mean, we've never said it out loud, but as long as you understand.
I understand. It's fine. But yeah, so tell me a bit more about, I mean, you've known you've had dyslexia since you were a kid, haven't you?
Yes. So I think I was diagnosed, I was in PP3, which would be the third year of school. So I'd have been, 8? No, 6, 7, 8? Okay, 6, 5. Yeah, I would have been before I turned 8 anyway.
Right.
One of my teachers made the mistake of calling me stupid, which did not leave a good taste in my mouth. So I went direct to the school gates. Mum picked me up and I was in tears. I told her why. My mum left me in the car and stormed off and proceeded to have a probably not very quiet word with the teacher, who then, funnily enough, actually trained to become the dyslexia special needs teacher at the school and actually built the entire department. I don't know whether that was because she was interested in it or because there was a mild case of sort of guilt. I'm not sure.
I mean, having met your mum many times, and she's a lovely woman, I would not get on the wrong side of her.
No.
Just putting that out there.
But, there was... my school was very small. In my class, there was 15, 16 kids.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And 4 were dyslexic.
Wow.
So it was very much a needed skill for someone to be able to do that. But I was taken off to either Birmingham University or Aston University. It was in Birmingham. I can't remember. I was quite young. It was near the fire station, so it was Aston University. And the psychologist there diagnosed me with dyslexia. And then I had assessments every year or 2 with him just to see how I was getting on. But I used to have to give up a lunchtime once a week to do extra classes. I used to have to do extra work outside of class as well, just to try and teach me ways of coping. So I've never overly found my dyslexia to be a hindrance, but I think it's because it was very normal for me to have to always do extra work to be on the same level as everyone else, but it just was normal. Because there were 3 other kids in my class as well who were all dyslexic. So I would go to I think I used to lose one class a week, like RE or PHSE or something like that. And instead of doing that, I'd do extra dyslexia work. But as I would leave the classroom to go to do this work, one of the others was coming back. So it was just normal that we'd just swap places and then have your one-to-one, and then we'd do group work, and did that until I was 13. And then moved to another school, but that school was even smaller. It was like 13 people in a class. So I had enough time with a teacher because I was lucky enough to go to a school that was small enough to have that sort of one-to-one time. So I didn't need so much extra help because I had more time from the teacher in the classroom. But it was, thinking about it, a lot of extra work because it was multiple breaks in a school week, and I'd lose a class a week as well doing extra work. So it was, plus everything else you'd have to do at home as well. So it was quite a bit, but it never felt like a hindrance. I did go through a phase of having coloured contact lenses.
Did they work for you?
I don't know is the answer to that. I mean, I was 10, 11 when I tried them, and I had one.
Okay.
I had it in my right eye, I think. And so I looked like a cyborg because I had a red pupil on one eye. never had any issues with wearing a contact lens, but it just
I really struggle with them. I just can't. It's no.
I tried them again recently, and I really struggle with them now. But I didn't when I was 11 at all. I used to be able to pop it in and out really easily, and that seemed to really struggle. Biggest problem was I used to leave it in overnight, which wasn't because I just forget. But I don't know whether it did me good or whether there was an attitude shift with people at school and my teachers and myself that gave me the confidence to know that I wasn't dumb. Actually, I could do it. I do think there was a slight change in the attitude of my teachers. I think they realised, actually, if we just encourage him a bit more, he'll realise he can do it. Or whether it was that the contact, whether the lens actually helped, or whether it was a placebo and it just gave me the confidence to do it. Because I know a lot of people had coloured lenses in their glasses, but that was like usually a yellow filter, which helps with reading, because most things you read is on white paper, and black on white is easier to read, so the filter helps with that. But mine were red and almost purple. It went through a load of different colours. I'm just to think how much they cost, but I can't tell you whether it was a placebo or not. I certainly did better at school afterwards.
Right.
And I went from struggling to being like top 3. More so in maths and science and art and DT and that sort of stuff. French I was always pretty good at until GCSE, where I just sort of lost the plot a bit. And then English I always struggled with. But anything fact-based or cognitive reasoning-wise, I was always very, very good. I don't know. I can't tell you whether it was a confidence thing or actually it flicked a switch in my brain and made something change. But there you go. There's dyslexia for me in a nutshell.
Oh,
he says,
brilliant!
Ranting for 10 minutes.
Well, no, it's very, very helpful indeed. Thank you. I mean, because it's always interesting to hear other people's experiences of these things. Because mine was quite different, because obviously I went to school outside of the UK and outside of Europe, and so my earlier experiences of it were not quite as supportive or anything else, because of the sort of cultural differences in sort of, well, for all learning disabilities, I think. The 90s, even everything was still a little bit sort of either it's made up or nobody knows about it or anything else. So it's fascinating to hear that, and I'd quite like to talk to other people about their experiences, because I suspect that you probably had you went to a very good school, and that probably helped quite a lot. But I mean, I knew I was dyslexic at a very young age, because my mum had me tested somewhere. I mean, she had me tested for all sorts of things, and unfortunately, I was hers. But it was an interesting one. So I used to get extra time in exams. Not at all the schools I went to, because I went to a few. Some of them just flat out refused, because they were like, no, it's made up. It's no such thing. You'd almost think that they worked for Catherine Birble's thing, but there you go. If you don't know who she is, Google her. She's a headmistress in North London who does not believe that dyslexia exists and that girls can't do maths. So unfortunately, these kind of, what's the right word here? These sorts of attitudes still unfortunately exist even today. I mean, I can't. I was going to say, in the face of an argument from ignorance, I understand that you may not know women who are good at maths. You might be in such a small bubble that you can make that argument, because all the women you know don't She's
do well
the head
at maths.
teacher of a school in North London.
I am fully aware. This is why I can't imagine that you could hold that point and have that job. But also the number of women who excel in all forms of science, not just maths. Famously, you've got people like Katherine Johnson, who, apart from having to deal with an enormous amount of racism thrown at her, because this was NASA
in the 60s.
So, like, huge amounts of the moon landing are thanks to the work that she did. And you have, and I don't know how, I don't know how. Well, I do know how people make arguments from ignorance, but it just boggles the mind that they would do so and then publicly do it as well. Like, I'm going to make a statement to the national press. I'm not going to research it because I'm right.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. She's come up before in the podcast, and I had to bleep quite a lot of my swearing because she did upset me that day.
Okay.
But yeah, it is unfortunate that there's still quite a lot of frankly ignorance around it, and even when it comes to educators, I think it's a bit of a problem. I mean, I think I got quite lucky when I went to university. My sixth form college that I went to arranged for me to have an assessment done, and I ended up, of all places, the only place in the entire county was the blind college in Hereford that could actually do these assessments. So I toddled on off to the blind college to get assessed, and they wrote up a very nice paper for me, and I managed to get some funding under the now defunct Disabled Students Allowance. And so I went off to university with a laptop, with a printer, with a scanner, with a digital. I mean, this is in the mid 2000s, a digital voice recorder, which I could use to record in lectures and then transcribe my own notes later, because obviously my handwriting is slow and I struggle. Even today, I mean, I explained to colleagues previously that if I'm in a meeting, I can either take part in the meeting or I can write notes. I can't do both because the processing speed thing comes in there. And so I'm always a little bit behind on what's being said because I'm writing things down, which means that, I want to say a thing, but that was 5 minutes ago. So I can do one or the other. I can be present or I can be writing things down. And I found that a lot was in lectures, was I wasn't actually taking stuff in because I was just writing it down, and I'd have to go home and read my notes and often write them down again. So having them recorded meant I could listen to it whilst reading the notes again, and that helps me to take stuff in more easily, retain this anyway. And obviously then I got extra time for exams and whatnot. But I then, after university, I worked for almost a decade before I went back into any kind of education when I did my apprenticeship. I think that's when you met me, actually. I was still doing my apprenticeship, wasn't I? And I said, can I have a little bit of extra time, please, for my exams? And the training provider said, well, yeah, of course, can we have your statement of needs or whatever it's called these days? And so I showed them the one from when I was 16. They went, can we have one from the last decade, please? I was like, okay, fine. I'm old
because I've become not dyslexic in the last 10 years.
I mean, that was literally what I said to my tutor. It's like, well, I've not recovered from it. I haven't taken the limitless pill and suddenly got over it all.
Yeah, when you had your leg amputated, can you just prove to us that it's still been amputated and it hasn't grown back?
Who are you, the DWP? But yeah, so I did, and I went to go and see my company actually employs someone who can do dyslexia assessments. And I've told the story before about how she then asked whether or not what I did for my autism, which was the most sort of hilarious way. But yeah, so I went back to the company and here's the latest thing. They went, okay, fine. And then they realised they didn't actually have any facility or any way of giving me extra time because, of course, they realised that if they stuck me in the same room with the other 11 people doing the exam, they'd all leave and disrupt me too much for the extra 45 minutes to be of any real use to me. But also, crucially, what the assessor had put on there was Simon should be given the ability to type because I'm a quicker typer than I am a handwriter, which completely threw them out because, of course, they wanted everyone to write everything by hand because that's still the way in which we do most examinations. Certainly in the UK, I suspect across most of the world, is that people handwrite stuff. I don't know about you, but I mean, the amount of cramping I get in my hand after writing for 5 minutes, let alone 3 hours.
Yeah, I had to make this argument as well during my apprenticeship as well. They wanted it handwritten, and I went, no. You won't. One, you will not be able to read it well, and also I'm going to be judged on how badly I spell, especially under pressure. No, I will type it. The rest of the course had been typed. All the coursework, all the workbooks.
Yeah, it's the same for me. Everything was
typed. Yeah. Why am I suddenly having to write this? There's no reason that I can't type it, and they did concede that I could type it, and I was like, thank you.
Well, there was a change in your learning style from one to the other. So you're asking someone to flex the way in which they've taken something in and produced it previously to then completely change it in a different way, and then you're assessing them against. It's madness, I think. But anyway, yes. So I did my exam. What they did was they put me into basically an office and gave me a computer. And my tutor, the lady who'd been helping me for the last two and a bit years with coursework and all the rest of it, was my invigilator. And so we just had a jolly old chat. And you're probably not really supposed to do this in an invigilated exam, chat away with the invigilator. But it put me at my ease. And she flat out refused, as is right, to talk about anything even vaguely related to even like the industry, let alone the exam, which was fine. We talked about her kids going, I don't know, where they were going on school plays or holidays or something. And to me, it was then just like, I'm in an office, I've got some stuff I just need to answer, dum-de-dum-de-dum-de-dum. 3.5 hours later, when my typing fingers worn down to stubs, I sort of stagger out of the room and go for lunch. But I got 94% on my exam, which is the highest exam result I've ever had in my life by a margin, and the highest of anyone who took that exam that year. So by making those small, reasonable adjustments for me, I was able to excel at something. And I mean, you saw me afterwards. I was so happy. I for the first time in my life doing an academic thing, I didn't feel slightly stupid for not being able to express the things I know. And the people who listen to this podcast, you hear a very, very edited version of it, because I do cut out an awful lot of my prevaricating and randomness, because I do struggle to get out the words and ideas and thoughts in my head. And a part of that is I now understand ADHD and dyslexia, ADHD and autism as well, sorry. But the dyslexia part of it, trying to get anything down on paper, that is a real struggle for me. And so by being given those small reasonable adjustments, it made such a difference to my view of myself as a person.
Michael, yeah, I think that's sort of what I was alluding to as well, is that when you understand that you can do it, it changes your entire opinion of yourself and your ability to do things, because I think it sort of, I don't know how to best to do the analogy, but imagine trying to run a race with weights on and then realizing that you can take the weights off. It sort of just goes,
yeah,
I can do it, and I can do it that way. I remember, there was something you just said that sparked some thinking. No, say what you just said again.
So being able to actually get stuff written down that's in my head, that translation of knowledge and thoughts and understanding through my fingertips and down onto the typed page in this case.
That was the thing. That was it. So being able to, there was always a disconnect between the written word and the spoken, and it was enormous. Like I could say it, and I could say it very eloquently, and people commented, that I tended to speak in a slightly nicer way than other people. But I think that was because I had to, and words came very easily by comparison to me trying to write something down, and I never used to be able to understand why what I had written down didn't convey what I thought when I wrote it down, because I used to have this problem in English and in anything where you had to make an argument. I was like, but I have made the argument. And the teacher was like, well, you haven't. And I was like, well, it's there. It's written down. Like, what is not come from my brain onto the paper? I don't know. But I used to really struggle with that. My mum always used to sort of say, essentially, that my brain was several words ahead at all times, and as if my hand was lagging. And you'd actually, if you read stuff that I wrote, you'd find words were missing, and it's almost as if my brain's been on lag and suddenly caught up, and then gone, hand jump 5 words, and now we've caught up with the brain. It's fine. It used to happen ever such a lot. It still does. I don't handwrite things anymore.
It's very much the same for me. Is that, but I mean, I get that both with the writing and sometimes with speaking. I mean, as you know, when I used to have the stutter, it's a case of like planning the words ahead to avoid the roadblocks, and so brain is running ahead of the words. And when spoken, that's slightly easier to get around. But yeah, written down, I understand why you said you prefer to send a voice note rather than typing something, because it's easy to process that.
Yes, it takes a long time for me to write a long message. Like it's a long, like people who write emails for a living, and they're like, I've got this email. It's like 500, 600 words. I'll just bash it out. It'll take me a minute.
I'm feeling seen.
What? Okay.
I never write long emails, I promise.
I have to compose that email, and it takes a long time, because
yes, no, it does.
It'll take me a long time to write the first draft, and then I've got to go back through it, make sure that all the grammar, all the spelling, and everything even vaguely makes sense, because it'll be all over the place, and then I'll rewrite it because I'm not happy with it. people who can get what they convey, what is in their head onto paper first go is not something I can do, and I have all the respect in the world. I'm sure that actually is not something that a lot of people struggle with to that extent. It's what I could not work in an industry where I was expected to send multiple written responses out, because it takes me an hour to write a decent email.
Yeah,
I'm trying to convey a point. That's an hour of my life. So eight emails in a working day is not going to be
not necessarily productive. Yes,
no.
But I mean, I do have to send a lot of emails and do a lot of analysis and write reports and briefings and all the rest of it, and it's not a natural skill for me. I can take in vast amounts of information and summarize it and share it by data dumping, info dumping, because I've never done that at all to anyone ever. But
well, yeah, it is what you're known for, Simon. Like you would have to have a personality bypass if you're going to expect me to be like, no, you don't info dump for 20 minutes on people's passing remarks. That doesn't happen.
Yes, well, I mean, sure, fine, okay. Yes, I don't really. I have nowhere to go from that. But yeah, no, it can be really quite difficult to sort of like spend the entire time, reading things and processing them and trying to get the answers back. And if people want to talk to me, I struggle to split my attention. So I can't be doing emails whilst I'm in a meeting, for example. Like I said, I can't take notes. I can only focus on one or the other because it takes a lot of brain power to write stuff down.
Yeah, I can look at pictures and talk to someone. I cannot do other. So my partner Reese and his friends that have a Discord, and they play games, chat in the Discord, and they can watch a film at the same time. So they'll be doing 3 things at the same time. Nope.
I don't. I can't.
I can just about play a game and hold a conversation, but it is not something that I did growing up. To be fair, not something anyone in my family does either. If you're playing a game, you're playing a game. If it's a board game, you chat while playing the board game. But like if you're playing a computer game, my character is going to punch your character in the face, and that is the only thing that I am doing at the moment. We are not talking about how our day was while playing the game.
Oh god,
game ends, talk about stuff, carry on playing. It's something that I've only just started being able to do, and I cannot process it, and I can't deal with. A lot of people are okay with multiple people talking at the same time. And apart from the fact that I grew up thinking that's incredibly rude, I cannot have one person talking and another and expect me to be what? No. I'm talking now. You will be quiet.
Yeah.
But saying that, I have noticed that if I'm relaxed enough, I can listen to 2 conversations at the same time and be fully aware of what's happening in both of them. But that's nothing to do with anything. It's just something I noticed at one of my birthday parties a couple of years ago, where
that's quite impressive.
2 separate conversations were going on, and I realised I could actually listen to both and process and then be in both of them. I had a little bit to drink at the time, so it might have just taken enough off the inhibition to go, it's doable. Who knows? Maybe there's benefits to alcohol. Maybe people should do a paper. Benefits of.
Do you know what? I suspect those papers exist, but let's write our own. That sounds great.
Yeah, I need £200,000
for Bordeaux.
Yes.
Do you think that the different type of alcohol makes a difference?
Well, that would be that.
I think we're going to have to check into this because it's whiskey different to tequila.
The validity of the paper would really require that we tried not only different kinds of alcohol but different qualities.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Ages.
Ages. Yeah.
What do you mean the 200-year-old Scotch isn't affecting you in the same way? Try this one. It's 1,000 years old. What?
I'm not sure there are any 1,000-year-old scotches, are there?
I have absolutely I can't imagine.
How much would be left in the bottle? I mean, the Angel's share must have been quite significant. But...
It would have to be very, unbelievably well sealed bottle, which it wouldn't be if it's from 1800.
Shall we ask Simon in the future to give us a little bit of history of dyslexia?
Yes, Simon in the future, roll.
Okay, so time slightly got away from me. I'm editing this about 4 hours before I go on holiday for over a week, and I haven't packed yet because autism and ADHD and work and just life got in the way. So, yeah, I'll do a potted history of dyslexia in the next few weeks. So, be nice to me, past Simon, past Joey, and future Simon, future Joey, and also you, the listener. Yeah. Anyway, enjoy the rest of this episode, and I'll make it up to you all soon. Sorry. Well, I thought that was fascinating. What about you?
Absolutely brilliant. I can't believe this is very dangerous. You could say anything now.
You
could have verbal diarrhea for 20 minutes, and you're getting me to agree on it. How dare you?
I mean, I did verbal diarrhea for insert time here, and yeah, it was fine.
please, robot voice to the time. 15 minutes.
Yeah, I'll do it with sort of the SpongeBob SquarePants. Sort of like some hours later. But yes. So I mean, apart from your schooling and so forth and dyslexia, do you think it affects you in your everyday life, in your social life, in any other way?
Overly, I did have an apology from Sam the other day because he's doing all of his ethical stuff for his union work, and he suddenly became aware that he may have said the odd passing comment about my inability to type text messages and the number of mistakes that I make. And he went, "Oh, that's because you're dyslexic." And I was like, "Yes, I have told you." And I got a lovely little apology if he'd ever made me feel bad about it. And I was like, "No, you're fine. Like, thank you. It's very nice that you do so, but it doesn't bother me because my entire life people will always make comments about the fact that I make mistakes when writing stuff down."
I used to be bullied for it, so but it's
I don't know. I did have a bully, but I can't really remember what he bullied me about. He bullied anyone who was vaguely different. Like he bullied the fat kid because he was fat, and he bullied the Asian kid because he was Asian. God knows what he could have bullied me because I was dyslexic or because I was gay. Who knows? We were 8.
Yeah. He's on the front bench of the Tory party these days, so.
I don't know what he does. I don't care to look it up, and I'd also have to have some form of social media presence to be able to look it up anyway. So.
Oh God, who wants to be on Facebook? That's a dreadful idea.
I know. Ooh.
But it's nice that Sam recognised that and said something. I think that's a positive.
Yes. So it doesn't. I wouldn't say it overly affects me, but obviously it still has an effect on my relationships if it's enough that people notice that it's something I struggle with. My partner Reese mentions it from time to time on sort of thing. Go on. I had nowhere to go with what I was saying.
I was going to say, because I can't remember if you speak any other languages, but I mean, I certainly know that I'm often better at reading things like French and Spanish than I am at listening to them. But I think it's because I can take time to puzzle it out.
So I can read, write, and listen in French well, I could. I don't have the opportunity to practice it at the moment and time because
I better go skiing then. Just fix that for you.
I know that would be nice. Written. So because with English, I'll try again. With languages in this country, they used to have to do different exams for one for verbal, one for listening, one for writing, and one for reading.
Okay, I didn't realise that. Fine, yeah.
So I always did really well in spoken. My French oral was always really, probably one of the best in the class, especially because I actually was able to not speak in a Birmingham accent while in French, which probably helped.
French for the Brummie accent. That just sounds incredible.
I remember someone. We were in France at a McDonald's ordering burgers, and she said, "Je voudrais un hamburger, s'il vous plaît," and which was fine, correct words, horrible accent and pronunciation, but fine. She got her burger and she came back and she went, "Oh, they thought I was French," and you're like, I really don't think they did, my darling. I really don't. But I never struggled with that. I never particularly struggled with reading. Listening was a little harder, but it was generally all right. But I think that's because the way in which it's taught in this country is that you would get a very short segment and then asked to work out what it said. It would be a sentence. Whereas if you had given me someone just giving a lecture, I would have I'd have no way of doing it. But because it was such sort of, here's a sentence, what does it mean? Here's a sentence, what does it mean? Rather than conversational or even just listening to and trying to work it out on the go, I don't think I'd be able to do.
Okay.
Still to this day. And writing has the same issue for me, regardless of whatever language it's in.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I assumed you wouldn't be suddenly a savant at writing if it was in French as opposed to English. Anyway, so I think we've been talking some time now, so we'll try and bring this to a close because otherwise the listeners will stop listening. Which
you should probably say about if you suspect you are dyslexic or
Yes,
you have a
that's a
child that's dyslexic, how to get diagnosed.
it's a good point. So yes, absolutely, advice. So I mean, if you think you are dyslexic, or you think maybe someone you know, or perhaps a child is, certainly in the UK, you can go and see your GP, and they can arrange for that. Or schools have a responsibility to sort that out. And in fact, many schools now have ways of getting that done for you. They can access funds and local authorities who can refer you to someone who's authorized and able to give you a diagnosis of dyslexia. And it doesn't have to be a medical professional. There are plenty of people who are trained in it. And certainly it's well worth looking at things like the British Dyslexia Association, which is great. They've got tons and tons of advice on their website, and I'll link them in the show notes, both for adults and for children. If you're in other countries, I would suggest you Google dyslexia and the name of your country and see if there is an association or group that might be able to help you. But there's nothing wrong with taking a look at the British Dyslexia Association website. They've got lots of advice and links to other countries' websites. So there you go.
Yeah, most schools in this country will have a SENCO officer, who is your special education needs coordinator.
I'm glad you knew what that stood for, because I was thinking, huh?
So, and they will then as well, they get a statement. So if your child is at school and gets diagnosed with some form of learning disability like dyslexia, or any language processing syndrome, I suppose, essentially your school will get funding to pay for someone to give your child extra help, and that might be actually having a teacher assistant in the classroom, or it might be a separate department. So the help is there. You just need to ask for it, and you will get signposted to it. There's lots of ways to do it, and it is important to do it, because if a child is struggling, it is going to affect their confidence, and a lack of confidence will make a bright child look dumb and make them struggle. Whereas if you can do things to help build someone's confidence, they're going to find ways of achieving what they want to achieve. And it doesn't have to be academic things, confidence plays into all parts of life. So making sure that a child doesn't get downtrodden because they're struggling, it will make the world a difference to their life going. It's certainly no for me.
Yeah, getting in early and being able to help kids to get the kind of education that will actually work for them is just so critical. Yeah, so I think we'll leave it there. Like I say, it's Dyslexia Awareness Week, so if you're not aware of it, hopefully you are a bit more now. And do please, go and share these ideas with other people and do some reading, and have a look at our show notes for links to amazing websites and people who are far better qualified than me to talk about this. It remains only for me to thank Joey for coming back. It's lovely to have you back on the podcast.
Thank you. I have time now. I can do things.
I'm very much looking forward to it.
I don't have to ring Circus the Circus anymore.
But yes, thank you so much for listening. I hope you all have a lovely week, and we'll speak to you again soon. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And then the music plays, etc. So let me just.
I don't have to ring Circus the Circus anymore.
Well, we'll get you and Sam and Kuro and Watt on one day, and my headache of trying to turn that into a usable podcast will be immense. But it'll be fun, so let's do it.
Should do a podcast of penises, then that'll.
Dear, oh dear. It's fine. Tom Daly can make a return.
Good old Tom Daly, friend of the show, not friend of the show. But if we mention him enough, at some point it'll happen.
Special friend of the show.
Yeah, special friend of the show, doesn't even know who we are.
They're like most of my friends then.
And the dish ran away with the spoon.